In the absence of Village President Regis Charlot, I'm Drew Irvin. I'm the Deputy Village Clerk. I will call the Monday, September 29th Committee of the Whole meeting to order. And I'll start off with roll call. Trustee Eshelmas? Here. Trustee Fisher?
Here.
Trustee Freed?
Here.
Trustee Hatch?
Here.
And Trustee Ryder?
Here.
All right, you have a quorum, and since President Charlot is not here, you will need to appoint a pres pro tem to run this meeting and the following meeting. But for now, I'm looking for a motion to name a pres pro tem.
I move that we appoint Jane Fisher as the president pro tem.
For second. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. It is yours.
Thank you. All right, well, we're going to skip on to non-agenda items and visitors. Public comment. The Committee of the Whole allocates 15 minutes during this item for those individuals who would like the opportunity to address the Committee of the Whole on any matter not listed on the agenda. Each person addressing the Committee of the Whole is asked to limit their comments to a maximum of 3 minutes. Is there anybody here? Anyone online?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Moving on to general business, the Committee of the Whole will entertain requests from anyone present to modify the order of business to be conducted. We have 2 items on our agenda tonight, consideration of the minutes, and then a discussion regarding municipal grocery retailers tax and home rule sales tax. So I'm assuming nobody is going to want to switch. Okay. So let's consider those minutes. Does anyone have any questions, comments, concerns, requests for, or do I need the a motion first?
It'd be great to get one.
Yeah. Can we get a motion to approve those minutes from the September 8th, 2025 Committee of the Whole meeting?
Motion to approve. Second.
Is it a,
Now you can ask for any questions or comments.
Okay.
Yeah.
so anybody have any comments, questions, requests for revisions?
Voice vote.
Voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Anyone opposed? I mean, I heard all the ayes, so. Anyone opposed? I don't hear any.
Minutes are approved.
Thank you. All right, item 4, Roman numeral 2, continued discussion regarding the municipal grocery retail tax and home rule sales tax.
Turn it over to you really quick.
Yeah,
Great.
that would be great.
So in your packet was a memorandum summarizing the conversation to date. And really, the last time this body met and talked about the different taxing strategies, the 2 that were left on the table were keeping or maintaining the municipal grocery tax. The other was a potential increase, a 1/4% increase in the home rule sales tax. Since that meeting, there's probably, I would consider 2 pieces of information that are new. There was some information about it in the packet. The first is involving, at the suggestion of Trustee Eshelmas, I reached out to all the members of the Business Advisory Committee, which again is just like it sounds, a group of business professionals in the Lake Bluff area that provide insight and guidance to the village board, the village president, and the village administrator. And I phoned all of them independently and I had a conversation with them. I think the good news is most of them were definitely tuned into this conversation and had been following along. And unanimous recommendation from that group was to support a maintenance of the grocery tax. In general, there was a lot of reluctance to deviate from the status quo and to introduce what they viewed as a new tax, which would be the sales tax in their eyes. And that, along with the real estate transfer tax, they thought would be a revenue stream that the village could only consider in the future, assuming that it's going to need more revenue streams as the village's capital demands grow over time. And they viewed that as an opportunity and thought not to tap it yet when the grocery tax existed, could be acted upon. The other piece of information was recently picked up by our finance director, Bettina O'Connell, at a conference, and I'll let her talk about that a little bit.
Sure. I recently attended IGFOA conference in Springfield. And Brad Cole was there speaking on behalf of IML, Illinois Municipal League. And one of the things, the first 15, 20 minutes of his session was all about the grocery sales tax and the state's big push to get all the municipalities to either respond and approve it or say that they're doing something else. But strongly proponent of approving because they always push for us getting the full local distributive tax. And if we're not accepting the grocery tax, they've lost their leverage in pushing for that 10% that we used to get that we don't get anymore. So he was a very strong proponent of it and like polling the room. And it was, yeah, a hot topic of conversation, as you can guess. Most people said that they had done it already. Show of hands in the room of a couple hundred people.
I'm sorry, what did you say, Bettina, about did you say something about the lottery? I thought you said 10%. What did
No.
you say?
So the local distributive tax, a portion of income tax that we receive from the state in lieu of local municipalities having the ability to levy income tax on their own. We used to get 10% and that's been notched down to about 6.5%. And the state or IML is always pushing to get us back to that 10%. And in not accepting the grocery tax, they kind of lose leverage over the state saying, well, hey, they're not even taking the grocery tax money. Why do they need 10% of income tax? So that was his argument.
Do you have any information about who raised their hand? Like what communities?
Oh, he went off the list that's on the website that we provided. I mean, a couple times, I know they update it periodically, but I think the last time we pulled it for the board was August 28th.
So since I have been vocally in favor of looking at this hard, as opposed to accepting the status quo, I'll speak only to say that I have now listened to what the community has said and have considered this further and am willing to adopt the status quo as being the best option for us at this point. It is a regressive tax, but I think President Charlo pointed out some meetings ago, people who are paying for their groceries with SNAP are not paying that tax. So that mitigates somewhat the regressive nature of the tax. I can understand why the business community would prefer us to be in line with the other other communities as opposed to the oddball in going to 1.25 for our sales tax and 0 for our grocery tax. And upon further consideration, it being considered a new tax to go to 0.25, I think the status quo is now acceptable to me as being sort of the better of the options available to us. That meaning that we should sustain or retain the grocery tax despite my concerns with it. I'm prepared to vote in favor of it.
Isn't there a middle ground though? I mean, what you just described, Susan, is to me some, like, what about the people who don't qualify for
Yeah.
SNAP? And have we considered the benefit of if our grocery stores are not taxing, how our revenues might go up?
That was kind of conversation that Tara and I had previously. And I think like some of my concern with this was the email, you know, we've received emails and we've been talking back and forth and things like that. And one of them said, you know, that the grocery tax is not regressive, and that's just simply not true. Even if you're not paying for SNAP, like Taryn said, there's a whole host of families who live in our community, even though they might not be seen by every single person, that are just on the cusp.
Yeah.
Those are also families who, when I moved here, I was still paying my student loans off. And because I was a public defender, I was able to qualify for forgiveness, but not until a decade later. And my husband was also paying his student loans off, and we had 2 kids, and we were just trying to buy a house. And so I know that these are real things. And now we're in this situation, in this economy, where we have the highest interest rates we've seen since I've been an adult. We have student loans are now just coming back to where everyone's going to have to pay them, and on a different income repayment plan that was ever offered previously at a much higher rate. You're looking at I spoke with the village manager of Vernon Hills, and they don't have a property tax. They don't have a village property tax. So their 1% wasn't even spoken about. It was done, via email, and they passed it because they rely on it solely. But I find that interesting that we not only have a property tax, we don't have a property tax, we do a levy. Essentially, our effective tax rate is about 2.26. So on top of that, that goes up every single year since I've been on the board. We take away a 1% tax. That was Governor Pritzker's, that was his right, and he did it for what I believe are the right reasons. I also come from Minnesota. We do not have a tax on groceries there. We never have. When I talk about groceries, I talk about sustaining groceries such as eggs, milk, things that do qualify for SNAP and WIC. When you're talking about candy and other things, fine. But when Drew, you were talking about the business committee that you spoke with, was a representative from Heinen's there?
No, they are not on that committee.
Is Target?
No.
So none of the real people who are going to be affected by it were. So the people who were voting were, of course, saying we don't want a general tax, right? Because then their businesses will be impacted. If you actually look at the economies of regressive taxes, the only way a grocery tax is not regressive is if you then have a general tax that is decreasing, because then otherwise you should increase the general tax. That actually has a less impact on poorer communities than the grocery tax. So when we're actually looking at things, apples to apples, this will have a greater impact than if you increase the general tax. Now, for me, maybe Lake Bluff does become a grocery destination for people. Maybe it becomes something else. I mean, we have to look at Meadowa as well. They're paying back their residents. So there are different ways to do revenue streams. And when we look at Evanston, which is the one everyone keeps looking at, it's like 2.5 million or something. We're looking at 250,000 and change, while our receipts keep growing year after year. So for me, I can't support it because I can't do another tax. We do tax after tax after tax after levy. This has been taken away, I believe, for the right purposes. So hard.
I'm looking at you because I know you're going to have something smart to say. You don't have to, though. That's why my head turned.
Yeah, no, I will comment. I really appreciate the feedback from the Business Advisory Committee. And Drew, thanks for reaching out to them. I can understand how between the two options, they wanted the one versus the other. I also can appreciate the semantics of some articles in other communities call it, this is not a new tax, but how I view it is indeed a new tax. It's a new ordinance, and I'm personally against any new taxes that are within our control. I'm very optimistic about our growing sales tax receipts over the last 18 months, 24 months. Very optimistic about that, what that means for the future. So I do believe we can make up the gap in that way. So I'm not, after a lot of research and conversations, I'm really not inclined to be excited about a new tax for our community.
And in this case, you're referring to the new tax being the grocery tax.
Correct.
Because what others are referring to as the new tax is 0.25
Correct.
additional sales tax.
Yes, others are referring to that. I'm referring to the new grocery tax that we would be voting on later tonight.
And so is it your idea that we would not approve either because of our optimism?
Yeah. And I did have a lot of thought about this. I spoke to a lot of businesses, community members. That's how I came to my thought process.
Shayna, do you have anything to share?
The last time we discussed this, I was in favor of eliminating the grocery tax or keeping the elimination of the grocery tax and going to, the 0.25 add for tax on retail. And that seemed to have, I think, some upside to it related to what it brings in terms of additional income as well, and lower impact, in my view, on, individuals who might be struggling to pay the price of groceries today. And I think with a relatively minimal impact on tax for retail as well, at such a low amount. So I think I'm still in favor of that in light of, what it can bring in terms of things that we do need to have revenue for, including our police pension fund.
I don't know if it's necessary for me to weigh in. I can. I think about what Lake Bluff represents to me and a lot of the discussions we've had over the last 5 years of me sitting on this panel about making Lake Bluff accessible to people of all walks of life. And I really like the idea, even if it's symbolic, of keeping groceries affordable and accessible. Look, it's hard times right now for everybody. Kat did an excellent job I know she put a lot of time and thought and research into the words she shared, and I was blown away by some of the information that she shared. And I actually also agree with Rafi. When I read what we were thinking about, and I think I said this last time we talked about it, I still don't know, I need to be convinced that it's really, really necessary right now for us to solve for the removal of that, the grocery tax. So where I would want to hover is nothing. That's not tax. Let's see what happens. I think, I really do think that there's a potential for our community being noted. If that'll probably be discussed, that we are a community that's choosing to follow the governor's example, and that maybe this is going to have a really positive impact, a larger impact than we could expect on Target and on Heinen's. That's where I'm at.
I'm tempted to say I was for it before I was against it.
I know.
Yeah. So I think where that leaves us is that we are not going to impose the grocery tax, and we're in wait and see mode as to the need for 0.25 additional sales tax. I'll repeat what I said before. There are a lot of things we don't know about the revenue coming forward in the future, but we are certain about some very big ticket items that are out there. So while I agree that the trajectory of the sales tax has been encouraging and perhaps reason to hope that we don't need to tax the grocery as we had talked about, I also know that we have millions of dollars of projects that we have coming.
Yeah.
So that's what that's why I had considered moving forward with, I think of it as the status quo. That being said, it sounds like we have with this body we don't have 4 votes in favor of the grocery tax, which is fine with me, frankly. And I think we can afford to wait to see if we need the additional sales tax.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. I mean, I would love it if it ended up resulting in a, huge increase in, not huge, but even a modest increase in sales tax, because we become a destination. That would be great.
Thank you. Drew, I recognize what this means to the village, to your team, to our programs, to everything that we do here. So that doesn't go unnoticed on me, but I want to make sure that I'm correct on something, Bettina. There is no sunset to this. So in 6 months' time, in 12 months' time, we could change our minds and say, we want to bring this 1% tax to the
Currently,
community.
there is no sunset. There's just 2 times during the year that you can implement it.
Okay.
So that being now and
July 1.
July 1.
So if we voted no tonight at our next meeting, it's not an end all be all for this conversation, if needed.
No, not currently.
You look like you have a thought.
Well, I will say, that was always an option, is doing nothing for now. But that does, when we are I guess December and January, when we're really knee deep in budget, that, you know, the fiscal plans are gonna be taking into consideration that this loss of revenue and what that means for
Yeah.
Yep.
the aggressive nature of the capital schedule, right? So there will be impacts, and the village has been very fortunate with its sales tax over the last several years, and exceeding projections over and over again. So that window of how painful that 250 is, TBD.
Yeah, and I suppose if we are seeing it sooner, we can always discuss and vote prior to
You can.
July.
You can.
We just have to wait
just
till
can't
July to
follow till-
impose,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
I mean,
I do think that the 0.25 will feel like a new tax at that point. Right now, we're trading off 1% against
Right.
0.25. I think that's a lot easier sell than in July, all of a sudden, a new 0.25. I do appreciate why that makes sense, given what everyone said, but I do think it's a harder explanation to provide.
Susan, my point was going, like, in July, going back to the 1% grocery tax, not the home rule increase 0.25.
I suppose we can discuss either, right? I mean,
That's how I understand it.
And I think that it is a reasonable explanation to say, like, we wanted to see.
yeah.
I don't think that that's not something people would, like, at least the people I've spoken to in the neighborhood, like, a lot of people had no idea, obviously, this is happening, but
Right, right.
like, how we spoke about it was, well, how do you know? And like, what have we seen? And we haven't seen anything, right? There's no real historical data yet.
Yeah.
So I think that that'll be helpful.
Anybody else have anything to contribute? Questions for Bettina, for Drew?
So the 250 that we've been talking about, has that been, I know we had no grocery tax for a period of time during the worst of COVID. Am I right about that? So,
Sorry. So I believe what he did was he still passed the revenue on to the local level, but it wasn't being taxed.
I see,
So we still received it, but
From
the
the
state kind
state?
of gifted it.
I see.
Mhm.
The state didn't
So
collect
we've
it, but they
never
were.
seen it not.
Okay.
delivered.
My question was going to be, what is that trajectory? If it's 250 now, has it been raising steadily with the price of groceries? Has it been,
So how
recently
I derived
much
that number
less?
was by looking at the confidential sales tax revenue for the entire 12-month look back period and just doing simple math. So it was a real number, give or take,
Mhm.
And
12,000.
a few years ago was,
Can't go back that
I
far.
think it was like 190 in one of the look back
Yeah.
years. It's
Mhm.
growing
Yeah.
because, like, to your point, right? It's grocery
cost of
receipts.
groceries.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, that is the risk, is that the village's schedule not be made. That's the risk.
Yeah.
And yes, everything goes up. Prices don't go down. Certainly has not been the case in anything construction that I've seen. Yeah, that's the risk. And if the money or the ability to go in and request that for the state to start collecting, that will exist. I probably would agree with Susan, the idea that, based off the comments that I've heard from folks, that it's a lot easier in terms of transitioning to maintaining a tax that's being paid for decades to turning it off and then turning back on. That's different. And so,
Yeah.
so that's, That's really it.
Mhm.
So.
And I did ask Peter to look at it, and I guess he's concluded firmly that we can't. I had asked Drew to look into whether or not we could exempt for everyone SNAP eligible.
Yeah, groceries.
Groceries.
That would be so.
Be perfect.
key.
That was the question, like, is there something in the middle?
Mhm.
And the idea is, but we're limited in our authority, but we're preempted in as home rule with the statutes to say, we're gonna choose the basket of goods that are taxed. Can't do
So we can't put like, say, a 30% tax on soda. I don't know who would do that.
Red Bull.
that's out of the village's control. So,
Just joking.
so the opportunities for choice narrowed quickly.
Yes.
Right,
So.
right. That seems,
Drew, I know I've asked you this like a million times off and online. Okay, I know the one side of 176, we do not get the taxing revenue from it. That is
On the
Shields
north
Township,
side of the street
Yes.
is unincorporated Lake
including
County,
scooters
including scooters,
that will have.
gaming.
Yeah, gaming.
Yes.
So that goes to Shields Township.
It goes to the county and
It's just the county.
Yes.
Okay, so that goes to their general fund?
yes.
Okay. We
they
can none of-
don't have grocery tax?
In the village, generally speaking, the village has opposed gambling historically.
Yeah.
And so that has been a stream of revenue the village has actively chosen to not collect.
Mhm.
Um,
But across the street they do.
The village has had a long range plan to try to bring
I see
those
why.
businesses into.
Right,
There's a lot of reasons.
right.
Yeah,
Capture the
yes.
commercial,
Absolutely,
Mhm.
yes.
and so, and
Like the,
generally speaking, low cost from an expense side of the ledger in terms of services required for
Mhm.
commercial, right? They're not generating students for the school to educate or.
yes,
Or for the park districts, most actually it's in the park district, but not the library and so forth. But so the idea that it's from a revenue, an expense balance, it's a plus. But that argument has not, and you can see how many businesses have annexed into the village on that side of the street over the years, not many. Zero to be
Mhm.
specific. So it's a hard argument to make. So,
True.
yes.
If it's in our long-term plan to acquire those properties into our village, have we incentivized those businesses in any way over the years?
The village has had meetings with owners over the years that have included, kind of a general, what would it take?
Mhm.
And the what would it take has not been,
Anything we would entertain, okay.
Thank you.
Well, the thing that concerns me about this avenue, because I would support either the sales on, the tax on groceries or the increased sales tax. I'm not, although I make some amount of sense, I'm pessimistic that we'll ever pass an additional tax if we don't do it now. I don't. So despite my now weeks of arguing against the grocery tax, I'm feeling concerned about doing neither, I have to say.
and here's one other piece to it, and this is just over the years, the villages, let me think about this so I can get it right. So a third of the village's revenue is sales tax for its general fund. 2/3 of that is auto related.
Mhm.
That's a lot of weight and reliance on one particular product type,
Mhm.
industry for sales tax. So there's a lot of eggs in that basket, right?
But,
And so the idea there
but
was.
that, I'm sorry, that's not included in our home rule. Go ahead.
No, but it's a very strong part of the revenue streams for the village.
How, though, if it's not included?
6.25%
Sales tax.
sales tax, that's the big part of the number.
Right.
Much bigger than the 250 you're talking about, but it's something that the village has relied on for a number of years. And largely the village, just really briefly, the village has tried to take money out of the operations basket and put in the capital, because the capital expenses and obligations keeps growing. And sales tax has been helping in that regard. But again, having all your eggs in one basket, there was a time when electric vehicles were rapidly coming in the marketplace, and those transactions were not normal in the sense that you can order them online. You didn't have to go to the traditional market. A lot of auto retailers were fighting that model because that's what they built their industry on. but there was no guarantees that would happen. So the idea that the number of sales transactions that happen in the village, that could go down. And that is an enormous amount of revenue to the village that is much more volatile than grocery tax. And that's what we talked about very early on, is you can set your watch by it. You will get that money, you can get it down to the penny just about. Whereas in the automobile industry, there was a period of time when there wasn't any product because of chips. And so there's dips. I mean, it's a tenuous situation. Now it seems like it's gotten a little bit better, but there's ebbs and flows in that market, but that is a big stream for the village. And that's why the diversification of revenue is always an important thing to do. And that's where the village has been fortunate. We don't have a lot of smokestacks, from that side, which I don't think we ever want. But at the same time, the diversification of revenue makes the base stronger. And so that's just knowing that we have a lot of eggs in one basket is something that you just need to be cognizant of on decisions like this.
So let me just understand something, and I apologize, I should have understood a long time ago, but the 6.25 is the state sales tax, right? In addition, there's currently a 1% home rule tax that does not tax automobiles.
Right.
But part of the 6.25 that is a tax on automobiles does
Come
get
back to the-
passed to us. Okay. So that's why automobiles is not part of home
That-
rule, but it
yeah.
is a big part of our sales tax revenue. Okay. So I continue to be concerned about not replacing this 250 with something now. But I do also appreciate the wait and see mode. There isn't a requirement that we do this now. And we can wait to see. I was fairly adamantly against the wait and see mode before because we know enough to know we have a big problem underneath our streets, most specifically North Avenue needs to be rebuilt, right? And there's millions and millions of dollars that we need to spend on that. So wait and see makes sense if we were in some kind of hold pattern,
I understand what you're saying.
but we aren't. We aren't as to the pension plan for the police. We aren't as to the construction projects that we know must happen to avoid catastrophic flooding in the village. So I'm concerned about passing up this opportunity, which frankly is probably the most realistic opportunity we have to maintain this funding stream. So I think that's my hesitation in doing neither right now.
I really appreciate that. I'm wondering. I guess I'm wondering, what is the math on the 0.25? Like, can we get some thoughts on what we would, yeah.
It's probably somewhere between 3 and 350,000 a year. So it's more than what the grocery tax would be.
Yeah.
There's just more to tax on things that cost more. And there's no SNAP reduction on things that are still essential in that category.
That's one thing that got me started thinking about the grocery tax again, because necessities are still taxed at 6.25, will be taxed at 0.25 additional. Toilet paper, paper towels, other things you buy at the grocery store that are not edible are continue to be taxed and are just as, maybe not just as, but very close to just as the a necessity of life. The paper towels probably aren't, but there are So that's part of my thinking of the course of the last few weeks over whether change to the status quo, the disruption to the status quo is worth the effort, or worth it, I guess, worth it. And I do think that if even in July, we could undo what we're doing here, it will be a much different calculation to do something completely different or something that is no longer the status quo. So with that, having stirred this hornet nest for 4 weeks,
You really did inspire me to get on board with
I
the
know.
no regressive tax, but
I know.
but that is why I appreciate, that is why I appreciate your thoughts, and I have always trusted you deeply. So I guess we're back to the discussion of our choices right now. Yeah.
If I may really quick,
Yeah.
the idea of tools that the village has in
Yeah.
a toolbox, very few tools are non-regressive that the village has access to legally.
Mhm.
And so, and probably the least regressive is property tax, which was immediately determined that that was something this group was not going to be recommending.
Well,
Right.
I don't agree with that. I think the general tax is less regressive, and that was kind of probably lost in my points
Mhm.
before, but that is true. That
The
is,
sale,
that-
general.
yeah, that's
general
less
sales tax.
progressive than a grocery tax.
Because it is optional in
Correct.
many ways,
Mhm.
other than toilet paper.
And a lot more people come here to buy, canals and Chevrolet and all those options.
Which we cannot
The
influence.
home rule sales
with
tax does
ours.
not apply to
Not
that.
apply to cars.
No.
Right.
It's
So-
lamps and
But it's
carpets
the-
and,
right.
Yeah.
and dinners out and
Mhm.
it's,
It's all the merchandise.
right, it's
Drinks.
Clothing,
bottles-
clothing.
Right.
carton,
Clothing.
yeah.
bottles of
But at point
wine.
five, right?
Yeah.
At point
Right,
5.
very small. I mean,
Right.
it can be more obviously for large purchases, but
Right.
And for those large, very expensive purchases, it's more discretionary and not as regressive. So,
Mhm.
yeah. So I continue to prefer the 0.25% increase in sales, recognizing that it puts us out of step with some other parts without other parts of the county. But you can choose not to buy a lamp. You can't choose not to eat.
So if I were to channel President Charlot right now, I'd be saying, I'm kind of hearing a lot of consensus that nobody's really that into the grocery tax. And where we're hovering is, are we doing the 0.25 or not? Or are we waiting and seeing?
And I think you, Rafi, you would not wanted to do either.
Yeah, after a lot of thought, I'm against any new tax. And I appreciate the business advisory's suggestion to us to not increase the home rule tax by 0.25%.
Yeah, I think I want to be clear that what I also am hearing is nobody on this panel has taken this topic lightly. We're all like, there's like a reverence here of balancing the best interest of our village's budget against and knowing all of the things that Susan said, like all of that is weighing heavily on our shoulders, and we're going to continue to have to seek ways to fund those projects. It's not going away.
It is sales and grocery tax are the one form of tax that is collected from people outside of the village. In that way, it's optional whether or not to purchase from our stores or not. So that is a factor I'm considering, in part because when we have these grocery stores and large store like Target, we have to have police presence because of the presence of these retail establishments. Not only grocery stores, obviously, Verizon, et cetera, all of those, didn't we just have a robbery?
Yes.
Tropical
Right,
smoothie.
we have, I think one of the suggestions was to dedicate some of this tax to the police pension, which is underfunded. And there is a tie in there, but because you have retail, because you have
Demand for service.
retail to people outside the community, retail to people inside the community, you have to have a police presence that you might not need to have if you didn't have those retail establishments.
Is that an option for us to earmark specifically?
That is one thing
Yes.
that I shot down. Money is money, I think I said. But there is a tie to that. There is a tie to the need for police presence because you have retail, right? That you don't, I don't know if we had to increase when we added Target, or we decreased when we lost Dominic's, or any of that. But there is a connection to the need for police to the existence of retail.
And
So-
from a past practice, the village historically has not done that. It's been the mindset, money is money, and the needs are the needs. But the has been, when there was a large number of tear downs happening in the village back, late nineties, early 2000s, the whole demolition tax was linked to the road program. So, we had the heavy trucks, equipment coming through, rolling, opening up the streets for new services, all that. And
Yeah.
so let's try to focus that money towards that function.
So what do we need to do right now before our actual board meeting? I mean, it sounds,
You don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
If you want to continue the
do we want to
conversation,
continue this
You can
conversation?
continue it. You can.
What's our
continue the
deadline?
conversation
October.
October 1st.
Tonight,
So no, we can't continue. I mean, if we want to do something,
regular agenda when you have.
We
the
can do
items,
that.
Yes.
We could also decide to revoke the sales tax, right? With the grocery
Yes.
tax. We could implement it for a January 1 continuity and decide in July to watch this issue and determine to switch to 2.5 or take it away. I mean, the one thing that Governor Pritzker has done for us is he's enabled us to make this choice ourselves in this circumstance. But so if we wanted to not have the gap in January and continue to study it, we could, I'm going to be fired from the head of the finance committee.
that's why I follow you like so much.
Oh
It's
my
like,
God.
But that's why it's good to have the cow, right? Like to
Yeah.
discuss this exact, the
Yes,
nuances
yes.
and like
I just
why.
feel like we've been down a person.
Yeah.
Regis hasn't been able to be here. We've been 4 people at the last meetings. We
Mhm.
haven't been able to have a consistent discussion about it. I've researched more and more each time, and I feel like time has run out. So is there a way for us to extend the time by saying, okay, we were going to pass it now, but we are going to make a vow that we are not going to stop talking about this, because we can revoke it again in July, right? We could do that. And I can,
Susan, you need revoke the grocery.
we
tax.
could revoke the grocery
Leave
tax.
it-
It's going to be a heck of a lot easier to revoke it than it is going to be to impose
They
it.
can just continue the tax.
Yeah.
Yeah, under the statute, you could pass the tax tonight to keep the status quo, as the village was saying. And then the act does allow us to discontinue the tax just with a certified copy of the ordinance to the department, letting them know that you would be discontinuing.
Okay.
So there,
So
yeah.
having led us down this path for this long, that's where I am. I would like to continue the status quo for now and continue to assess the need for this tax. Understanding, because I've been making these same points and I appreciate it. I wish we could have all been at the same time talking. But understanding that we have the option to every 6 months make a different decision, right? Because I think it's a very different thing for us to do, to turn around and take it away, than it is for us to impose something. I know, Rafi, you may not even be comfortable with this, but I guess that's, given the time constraints, that's where I land, is continuing it, the status quo for now, and continuing to measure it, learn about it, understand how it impacts, who it impacts, whether there's a way for us to exempt SNAP food, for example.
It sounds
going
like we
forward.
can't, though. I mean, that's what,
Until the statute changes.
right, that's true. I know we're probably right.
So that's,
Yeah.
I guess that is where I am, is in favor. I'll make a motion during the regular meeting to maintain the status quo by imposing the grocery tax. and also to maintain, and if we don't have 4 votes, we don't have 4 votes. And then with the expectation that we will revisit it so that we could revoke it in the next
Effective July
opportunity.
1.
And I guess that's where my head's at right now.
Thank you.
I mean, the only thing I have to say is, Susan, I really appreciate your comments. You say maintaining the status quo, but what I hear is new tax to groceries, and that's what it is to me. I really appreciated Trustee Hatch's comments, and I love the idea of being a grocery destination, the phrase she coined. And I think we have that opportunity amongst our peer communities. So it's an opportunity for us, and I'm still against any new tax, so.
Understood.
One last round.
Yeah, I think I'm aligned with Susan of keeping the tax in place, for Lake Bluff on the basis that we really can't, afford at this time to be making cuts to our tax revenue, given the crucial projects that we have. And, I'm happy to revisit it too, and especially with some, information about how other communities are being impacted by their decisions, maybe a little bit more evidence to help us in our decision-making if we do decide we want to revoke it. I also appreciated Drew's commentary about, having all of our eggs in one basket in terms of the sales, the retail and service tax, and the impact that could have as well. So I would be aligned to go with what Susan is recommending.
Okay, well, I continue to be more focused on, here's what I think. I think if we're going to get to the point where we reevaluate, and there's never going to feel like a time to not keep money rolling in,
Right.
It's not like we're going to get there in January or whenever we decide to reevaluate and say, well, we no longer have the, the stormwater management or the police fund, pension fund to worry about. We still are going to have to worry about those things. And I'm typically the person here saying, let's make the hard decisions. People will be mad but we're going to have to be finding money for all these projects. We are going to have to make some changes down the line if we can't find it elsewhere outside of the village. So I continue to feel pretty strongly about not imposing the grocery tax. I probably could be persuaded to not wait and see and do the sales tax. That's where I'm at. So I think maybe we need, I think we need to maybe bring this back up in our regular board meeting, perhaps to decide if we're voting or not, or leaving it alone. Does that seem like where we're at? Drew?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
So for a motion to adjourn.
Yeah. Can
Motion to
I-
adjourn.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Let's take a 5-minute break.